Imagine being called upon to save an entire nation when a war sees absolute power and, at the height of glory, simply walk away from it all. Does that sound impossible? Well, this is the real story of Cincinnatus, the man who, after securing Rome's survival, shocked everyone by rejecting power to return to a simple life of farming. While many leaders throughout history have clung to power with all their might, Cincinnatus did the unthinkable. He preferred the plow to the sword, the field to politics, turning down the throne that could have been his. What would drive a man to relinquish absolute control of one of the greatest powers of antiquity? And more importantly, what does this act reveal about the true meaning of leadership and honor? Today, you'll discover how this temporary dictator redefined the concept of republican virtue and why his story resonates even today. Get ready to dive into a legacy that goes far beyond military victory. A legacy of humility, sacrifice, and choices that shaped Rome's future. What you learn about Cincinnatus in this video might completely change your perspective on what it means to be a true hero. Before becoming a legendary figure, Cincinnatus was a simple farmer, deeply connected to the land. He lived a modest life, tending his crops by the banks of the Tiber River. Rural life, far from the political ambitions consuming Rome, was his choice. His simplicity stood in stark contrast to the Roman elite, who were embroiled in constant power struggles. However, this tranquil life did not isolate him from public affairs. Even in retirement, Cincinnatus maintained a civic-minded stance, being called upon on several occasions to serve in public positions. His reputation as a man of honor and virtue preceded him. At the time, Rome was experiencing internal turmoil. The Roman Senate was perpetually divided, with factions vying for influence and control. Cincinnatus, though not a man of traditional politics, was appointed consul during a critical period. He accepted the role, performing his duties with great effectiveness, but returned to his farm as soon as his term was over. Cincinnatus's ability to balance his civic responsibilities with his desire for a peaceful life made him a respected figure. Despite being an emerging power, Rome was vulnerable and often relied on leaders of unwavering character to keep it united. The contrast between his agricultural life and his public role made Cincinnatus a symbol of integrity. While many others in his position would have used power for personal gain, he distanced himself from such practices, always preferring hard work in the fields to political manipulation. His ability to avoid corruption made him a living example of republican virtues. For him, life in the countryside was not just a lifestyle choice, but a conscious rejection of urban excesses and power. Cincinnatus embodied the ideal that service to the state should be temporary, done for the common good rather than personal gain. Rome, surrounded by enemies and facing internal crises, needed leaders who put the republic's interests above their own ambitions. In this context, Cincinnatus was the antithesis of the politicians of his time. His detachment from power was precisely what led him to be called upon in times of need. He was not in the fields out of necessity, but by choice. This decision would profoundly shape his trajectory, and the eternal city would soon recognize the value of this man, who lived with his hands in the soil, but was destined to shape the future of the Republic. It was in this context that Cincinnatus's name began to stand out, not for political intrigues, but for his absence from them. For Rome, he was a figure of stability in a sea of chaos. His simplicity and dedication to the land made him a living example of the ideal Roman citizen, one who serves the Republic when called upon, but never seeks power for itself. This trait would be key to his rise at the most critical moment in Roman history, when a city's fate depended on a man unwilling to sacrifice his principles. The year was 458 BC, and Rome faced an unprecedented crisis. The Equi, a neighboring tribe and relentless enemy, were marching towards the city with a powerful army. The Roman forces, caught off guard, were at a numerical and strategic disadvantage. The Roman Senate, in desperation, realized that the only hope was to appoint a dictator. In the Roman Republic, the position of dictator was an extraordinary one, granting absolute power to its holder, but only for a limited period. It was the most extreme measure the Senate could take to save the city. In this context, the senator's gaze turned to Cincinnatus. Reluctantly, Cincinnatus was pulled from his fields, where he was plowing the land, to take control of Rome in its darkest hour. He accepted the position of dictator with the same humility with which he had taken on the role of consul years earlier. However, this time, the task was even more daunting. He needed to rally the demoralized troops and confront an enemy threatening the very existence of the Republic. The responsibility of saving Rome rested entirely on his shoulders. Unlike many leaders, Cincinnatus did not view power as something to be held onto, but as a tool to restore order. Under his command, Rome quickly reorganized its forces. In a remarkably short time, Cincinnatus assembled an army, trained them, and prepared them for battle. His military strategy was based on simplicity and efficiency, just like his personal life. He was not a leader lost in complex power schemes. His focus was on Rome's defense, and his orders reflected this clarity. Within days, he led his troops to the battlefield. His ability to turn a desperate situation into an opportunity for victory showcased his greatness as a strategist. The battle was swift and decisive. Under Cincinnatus's command, the Roman army defeated the Equi overwhelmingly. The victory, which could have become a symbol of personal power for another dictator, was for him a mission accomplished. The people of Rome celebrated the return of safety and order, and Cincinnatus was hailed as a hero. However, what made this story even more remarkable was what he would do next. While many, upon achieving such supremacy, would consolidate their power, Cincinnatus chose a completely different path. Rome was saved, but the true lesson of Cincinnatus's story was yet to be revealed. His leadership, marked by efficiency and simplicity, would become an enduring reference of how power, when exercised with moderation and focus on the common good, could save a nation without corrupting the soul of its wielder. After this victory, Cincinnatus faced a choice: to remain in power or return to his life as a farmer. The choice he made would profoundly impact the concept of leadership in Rome and the Western world. After assuming command as dictator, Cincinnatus knew time was of the essence. With Rome on the brink of collapse, there was no room for error. He quickly devised a plan to confront the Equi, a tribe known for its ferocity and combat skills. Instead of risking a prolonged battle, Cincinnatus opted for a lightning strategy. Rather than assembling a vast army, he chose to recruit soldiers from the city and nearby fields, selecting men who were familiar with the terrain. This decision, which at first seemed risky, proved brilliant as he used the geography to his advantage. Cincinnatus knew the Equi were camped in a vulnerable position. He ordered a nighttime march, surprising the enemy while they were resting and unprepared for an attack. The victory was swift and decisive, with the Roman troops encircling and subduing the Equi before they could reorganize. In a matter of days, Cincinnatus not only defeated the invaders, but also restored order in Rome, freeing the city from imminent danger. What was seen as a crisis that could have destroyed the Republic turned into a lightning triumph, guided by the relentless leadership of a man who sought no power. This victory had a profound impact on the people of Rome. Cincinnatus, unlike many leaders before and after him, did not use military success as a springboard to increase his political influence. Instead, he viewed the act of saving Rome as his duty, not as an opportunity to consolidate power. His leadership was driven by a sense of civic responsibility, not personal ambition. The speed with which he acted, defeated the enemy, and restored peace was a testament to his strategic vision and his ability to inspire confidence in his troops. After the victory, the Senate and the people of Rome were ready to crown Cincinnatus as the savior of the Republic, giving him even more power. He could easily have remained as dictator, extending his authority beyond the 6 months permitted by Roman law. Many expected him to do just that, as so many leaders had before him. However, Cincinnatus surprised everyone by rejecting this opportunity. He had fulfilled his duty to Rome, and for him, that was enough. This choice set him apart from all other dictators in Roman history. Cincinnatus's decision to relinquish power shortly after his victory was an act of humility that would resonate for generations. He had the chance to transform his military victory into absolute political power, but chose instead to return to his farm and his plow. His detachment from power marked a turning point in how Romans viewed their leaders. Cincinnatus demonstrated that true power lies in the ability to lead with integrity and to know when to relinquish authority. This moment would become the cornerstone of his legend, reflecting his essence as an extraordinary leader. When the dust of battle settled and Rome began to breathe safely once again, Cincinnatus astonished the Senate and the people with an unexpected act. He renounced his position as dictator. At the height of his power, Cincinnatus made the decision to abandon the role that gave him absolute control over the city. He could have extended his term, made unilateral decisions, and even solidified his position as the most powerful man in Rome. However, all he wanted was to return to his farm and continue the simple life he so cherished. This renunciation of power was seen as an almost unimaginable act in Roman politics, where most leaders clung to power for as long as possible. For Cincinnatus, the idea of leadership was always associated with duty, not privilege. He believed that dictatorship was a burden to be carried only in times of crisis, and that once the situation was under control, the leader should relinquish their authority. Stepping away from power was, for him, the greatest proof of virtue and commitment to the Republic. By returning to the field, Cincinnatus provided a practical example of his convictions. He not only rejected luxury and titles, but also reaffirmed his belief that the greater good lay in temporary service to the state. His decision was even more remarkable because he sought neither public recognition nor eternal glory. He merely wanted to resume his life as a farmer, plowing the land with his own hands. This choice was an act of greatness that transcended Roman politics and left an ethical legacy that would inspire future generations. Even though he was no longer involved in Roman politics, Cincinnatus's name continued to be mentioned as the ultimate example of selfless leadership. While other leaders built monuments and temples in their honor, Cincinnatus planted his seeds and harvested his crops. He didn't need statues to preserve his memory. His acts of renouncing power were the legacy he left to the Republic. The Senate, perplexed by his decision, understood that Cincinnatus embodied the ideal that power should only be wielded in times of need and with the aim of serving the community. From then on, the story of Cincinnatus was told not as that of a victorious dictator, but as that of an exemplary citizen who understood the true meaning of public service. By renouncing power, he not only saved Rome militarily, but also morally, showing future leaders that true greatness lies in humility and personal sacrifice. Cincinnatus made it clear that a strong leader is not one who clings to power, but one who knows when it is time to let it go.